American workers are quitting their jobs in record numbers. Government data shows a high of 4.4 million people left their jobs in September. It's part of what's been dubbed the Great Resignation. Some say workers have spent the pandemic reevaluating their priorities and values, leading them to leave their places of work or demand more from their employers. Joining us to discuss the so-called Big Quit and what it means for the future of work are Hillary Phillips Mehta, Vice President of Employee Experience at the global communications firm Edelman, and Michelle Kahn, a social scientist who completed her doctoral work at the University of Chicago. She recently published an op-ed in the Chicago Tribune about the Great Resignation. Now, according to the U.S. Bureau of Labor and Statistics, 3% of workers quit their jobs in September. The industries with the largest increase in departures were arts, entertainment, and recreation, other services like repair and maintenance or personal services, as well as state and local public education. Michelle Kahn, let's start with you, please. Why are workers quitting their jobs?
I think there's a whole lot of reasons for this, but the first thing I want to say is that this is not just people leaving their jobs because of falling back on pandemic relief. I think there's a really big question about worker burnout. During the pandemic, a lot of people went above and beyond to risk not only their mental health, but also their physical health, and they didn't get a whole lot in return. So I think that there's a real existential crisis going on in terms of what people want to be doing during their days, during their precious days that they have here on this planet. So I think that there's a lot of that going on. A lot of women have also had to exit the job market because there's a complete crisis of care work going on in this country at the moment. So I think that these are some of the biggest questions, but of course it depends on each and every individual, and every individual has a really fascinating story to tell about that moment where it all just became a little too much for them.
Now, earlier today, we spoke with Ashley South. In the spring, she left her job at a bank to start a magazine in Naperville. One reason, she says, is a difference in values. She says comments by a top executive at an employee appreciation meeting made this clear to her. Let's listen.
Telling this group of people who kept the lights on during the pandemic that he was impacted by not being able to go to the Alps for his annual vacation. And he didn't ask any questions. He just talked about how he was impacted.
Hillary Phillips Mehta, does this ring true to what you see employees looking for more broadly from their places of work?
So Edelman recently released the 2021 Trust Barometer special report on the belief-driven employee, which highlights how the employee-employer relationship has evolved throughout the pandemic and the new expectations of employees. And 76% now do have those higher expectations than they did a year ago. And what is motivating them to join and stay has shifted dramatically. So they're turning inward and reflecting very deeply on what they want to prioritize in their lives and at work. 6 in 10 are now choosing employers based on their values and beliefs. They're leaving jobs in record numbers, with compensation and benefits no longer being enough to incentivize them to join or stay. They're choosing based on flexibility, social responsibility, senior leadership, and the company's stance on, controversial issues over the company's success in the marketplace. There's a huge gap in these expectations and how employers are showing up. So that's when people are leaving. We found 1 in 5 have left or are planning to leave their jobs in the next 6 months in search of an employer that will meet their expectations.
So here's another one. Earlier today, we spoke with Fady Haddad, a video editor who recently left his corporate job to do freelance work. Here's a clip about why he left.
Even though I was doing work that I loved, it was the corporate environment that made it, like I use the word leech as a soul sucking, because they would just try to get as much out of you as possible. So I don't think this is unique to me. I think this is across the board. Like, a lot of people just look for worker bees.
So Michelle, many people are pivoting to the gig economy, starting their own businesses. Why is that the trend? Why are we seeing that?
I think why that is the trend is, really because of this being fed up of the 9 to 5, the bosses, the exploitation. But I really want to focus on not why, but what is the actual consequence and what my concerns are about that. So it's actually a very significant trend. The recent numbers are quite startling, showing that there's been a record number of people registering for new businesses just in the last few months. And a lot of people are celebrating this, but if you actually break it down, a lot of different kinds of categories of work fall into that. So you have people who are, opting for startups, but freelancing, contract work, but also people who are joining the gig economy. But for me in my work, what I really want to point out is that freedom always entails risk. It can be a double-edged sword. We've seen this with the gig economy. It was very alluring at first, where people thought that they no longer had to sort of, sell their souls for someone else, but could work for themselves, be entrepreneurs, get up and start their own businesses. But over time, their wages have been diminished because of of the fact that they have been sort of pushed into more and more precarious kinds of work. And some of them are not even being able to sort of make ends meet, even though they're working more than ever. So the big question is, what kind of safety nets are out there for people who are leaving the sort of safety and protection of traditional jobs? And it will be much more dangerous for some people than it will be for others.
And because it comes at the risk of losing some benefits that those traditional 9-to-5 jobs might have. Hillary, what can employers do to retain workers?
It starts with having a shared understanding of the company's employee experience at large, or what it means to join and work at the company through what we call an employee value proposition, or EVP. This is a crisp articulation of what employees can expect at work in exchange for their productivity and performance. And that extends far beyond the compensation and benefits, but it really outlines the beliefs of how a company does business, their brand image, and more. So many companies are reevaluating that EVP right now because today's employees are expecting a powerful employer brand that aligns with what they're seeking most. So we like to think about it as taking a consumer grade marketing and measurement approach to recruitment and retention. Companies have to brand their organizations and their employee experience to ultimately strengthen their culture in this new environment and position themselves for future growth.
And Michelle, we're almost out of time, but I want to be sure to ask, how does this connect to how the U.S. thinks of productivity and the role of work in people's lives?
Yeah, I think that this is, for me, is one of the most important questions. As a historical sociologist, I sort of think about, the long term, where it comes from, that why do we value work so much? Why are we so addicted to this as being the primary way that we think of ourselves as human beings or deserving of freedom in any kind of way? And how can we break free of this?
Michelle Khan and Hillary Phillips Mehta, thanks to you both for joining us.
Thank you.